Welcome to Press Play, the Street Cred podcast with Elena Krasnow, yours truly, and Jimmy Moak from Street Cred PR. In this podcast, Jimmy and I will welcome industry leaders, journalists, influencers, and friends of the firm to shed some light on who they are and the various twists and turns that led them to where they are today. We're grateful to have you listening in, and we hope you enjoy the show. My name is Elena Krasnow. Welcome to Press Play, the Street Cred podcast. I'm so grateful you're here. I'm the editorial manager and client brand evangelist at Street Cred PR and your host for today's show, along with co-host and managing partner, Jimmy Moak. We will break down the show into two segments: Press, where we dive into all the hard news about our guests' life and their professional goals, and then Play, where we have a little extra fun with it. Today, we are delighted to be joined by co-founder and CEO of Savvy Wealth, Ritik Malhotra. To give our listeners a little background on Ritik and his impressive career, he has started and sold two successful technology companies. The first one was Stream, a cloud storage software company that was acquired by Box in 2014, right before their multi-billion-dollar IPO. The entrepreneurial bug bit again when Ritik and his co-founders launched another company, Elf, a fintech building money movement and financial ledger technology that was acquired by Brex in 2019. Ritik subsequently joined Brex as its director of product management. It was here that he started and built Brex Cash, the company's second business line offering cash and investment management products through its broker-dealer. Fast forward to today, and he's at the helm of his next company as the co-founder and CEO of Savvy Wealth, a digital-first platform for financial advisors centered around modernizing human financial advice. Ritik is also a Y Combinator alum and holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science from UC Berkeley. Ritik, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to do this.
Awesome. We are so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. But before we dive into your story and the journey you've been on as an entrepreneur, which is certainly an elaborate one, we like to start off with an especially important question, which is, what did you have for lunch today?
So today was tacos from a New York City special place called Tacombi. So two tacos with a different kind of chicken.
Yum.
Beautiful. Now, when it comes to tacos, are you a sour cream guy or
Non-sour cream, but I will take any new kind of salsa or the special salsa that the place has. And I'm not shy to try as many out and on the spice spectrum as well.
And do you ever double down on a weekly basis? We all know the saying, or the day that is mostly reserved for tacos, Tuesday. Here we are on Friday recording. Are tacos a go-to for you for lunch?
I wish they were, but I think usually it's a Mexican rice, beans, chicken bowl of some sort. But tacos are always a nice treat, maybe once a month.
Awesome. I love a good bowl. All right, one last taco-related question. Which camp do you fall in when it comes to cilantro? Are you pro or anti?
I used to be anti. I now have switched to pro. Although I think that's a pretty rare transition because I think
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever heard of that.
I think at this point, I'm always looking to find other things that add more flavor to the tacos, and cilantro, I have to say, does do a little bit.
Wow. So both of my parents are genetically dispositioned against cilantro. So I have a strong anti-cilantro approach in my taco making.
Ritik, thanks so much for answering that question. Believe me, I get it. We just went from talking about your impressive background, the fact that you have a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from UC Berkeley, to talking about sour cream and cilantro. We appreciate you rolling with the punches here on Press Play.
I love it. This is that's exactly the transition I was looking for.
Well, we had to humanize you somehow after listing all of your impressive credentials, right? Awesome. Well, let's jump in. Start off by telling us a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur. Did you always know you wanted to be a founder from a young age, or did you have exposure to the weird and wonderful world of entrepreneurship a little later down the road?
Yeah, let me start way back in the day. So for me, entrepreneurship as a concept wasn't really a thing until much later in life, but my start really came from when I was a kid. And I fell in love in grade school with computers and just loved doing anything related to computers and technology. So as a kid, I was fascinated by the fact that, well, hey, you can play computer games and browse the internet and all of these things. And so I said, well, why don't I also figure out how I can make my own computer games or internet websites and so on and so forth. And so I started tinkering around, learned how to write code, learned how to develop these websites and launch them online. And from just a personal perspective, I always wanted the latest gadget or whatever else. So to earn that money, I said, well, hey, if I can make these websites and games online, why don't I figure out a way to actually start charging for this and make money? So in middle school is when I would say looking back, is probably the first time I was in the entrepreneurship, quote unquote, mode as a kid. So this is the first time I was able to build websites, put them up, and earn money with advertising, subscription fees, and a number of things. And over time was able to generate, good money for a 11, 12-year-old at the time. Saved enough to, buy the latest gadgets and whatnot. And I just really caught the bug. And I said, well, hey, if I could do this and I could put up these websites and make money, I'm sure other people are looking to do this as well. And I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I have to put a website up. I have to do these things and just over and over again, the same thing. So then I started to actually sell that as a service to other people instead, saying, hey, this is an easy way to create websites, put them up, earn money, et cetera, and I will kind of help you do all of that. So that's everything from the hosting and all of those things. And so that became another business because now instead of me doing the work to make my own websites, I was helping others, kind of selling the picks and shovels, so to speak, to the other folks. And that became even a bigger business. So it was an important lesson at an early age on just kind of organically understanding how do you even start to make money from nothing and then kind of build and learn over time on other market needs in order to kind of build a bigger and bigger business. So I've always credited that as a kind of a fun start to entrepreneurship as a kid. And then fast forward, when we were maybe about 10 years later or about 8 years later, I was now at the point that I was deciding where to go for college and what I wanted to do. And again, thinking back to my past experiences, it didn't seem like I was going to go and select an entrepreneurship major or say, hey, that is exactly what I want to do. But to me, organically, I always had felt a connection to, well, look, if I can make these things using technology and make something out of it, that's a skill that I want to hone in. And so that's really where I decided, let me go and study electrical engineering and computer science. And a year and a half into college, that's when I organically, again, just had a number of these ideas tinkering around and said, well, look, I really do strongly believe in pursuing one of these full time instead of taking a more traditional path of working somewhere else. And that's kind of the first, I would say, professional foray into entrepreneurship when we started the first company, Stream, which you mentioned. So I'll pause there. Hopefully that gives you the background onto what it started.
So how old were you when you started Stream?
I was 19 at the time.
Jimmy, what were you doing when you were 19?
Well, crazy story, but I was a dad at that age. So totally other end of the spectrum. Did you? At what age did you start to accumulate and have the need for employees? Was this soon after you were 19 or? Talk about that dynamic.
Thinking back to it, even when running those initial, let's call it early online businesses in middle school, I remember, while there wasn't a formal concept of employees or anything at the time, but online, kind of while learning about how to do this, I actually used to rely on online communities quite a bit. And so back then it was all about, using these web forums, other tutorials, and sometimes just instant messenger with folks that you connected with these communities. And so over time, I actually built up a number of folks who were interested and they would help me part-time in return for effectively some monetary exchange, right? So again, the concept of employees and employment wasn't as formalized in my head, but in practice, that was what was happening. And it was very organic, hit some scaling issues, couldn't actually manage a number of customer support tickets or had some issues operationally running this service on to help others put websites up. And so I got other people to help and paid them a little bit. So that's probably the first time it actually happened. And then of
Wow.
course, with the actual businesses later on in life, 19, et cetera, onwards, that's when we had a much more formal way to hire and have employees.
Wow. I can't think of many 12 and 13-year-olds in my life that had employees at that age. That's really impressive. To bring us like a little bit further into the future, you're now building Elf. What was that stage of your journey like from its inception through the eventual sale to Brex in 2019?
Yeah, so the starting Elf was something that was very intentional. So for us, when I was 19, it was me and another friend from college. We ended up starting the first company, Stream, and a few years later, it was successful. We had hired our friends, and it was running well. And we sold that company to Box. And after a few years staying at Box, integrating our software in and growing that team and making sure everything was good there, we got the same team back together again. And again, we were always interested in building new things and finding ways to improve some sort of an industry and use our skills there. So getting that team back together, we basically said, look, it's really important that we work together and we'll work together to figure out where we want to hone and implement our skills. So starting Elf was one of the things that we realized was we went and talked to a number of folks across the financial services industry. And that included, actually, I would say financial services, and also at the time explored cryptocurrency as that was coming up in 2017, 2018 or so. We explored talking to banks, even casinos, as they have a number of financial service needs, and a whole different kind of host of people that needed something related to financial services. So that was really what we gravitated towards purely organically of, hey, maybe this is an area we should work in. And after talking to about 100 or so folks in, you can call it chief innovation officer type roles, or in the IT department, or some sort of R&D at these types of institutions, what we realized was the problem we wanted to solve was effectively to track currency movement of some sort, or basically multi-party transactions. Very niche, very kind of ingrained type of problem to realize, but we realized that was the common thread. Talking to a lot of folks that were part of running community banks or even casinos and other kind of similar institutions, they had a tough time tracking all of this money movement across a consolidated ledger across multiple different entities internally and externally. So that was the technology we started to build and ultimately kind of started to pilot with these folks. And right around then in 2019, one of the things that we were always thinking about was, as a business, does it make sense for us to be building this technology, which we can call kind of financial infrastructure, so to speak, or is it a better business to be in the what we would call end consumer business, the application layer, where you're actually the provider themselves, the bank or the casino or whomever else? And I think our thesis changed, and we actually felt that it's better and more lucrative as a business to be in the latter. And so it was kind of a great timing when Brex also, we were connected with them, and Brex, for everyone's knowledge, is a corporate credit card, corporate banking, spend management suite of software. At the time, they'd only launched their corporate card product. And so for us, it became a really good fit because we were able to merge with them and get acquired and effectively use our skill set and technology to start their second business line, which was effectively this corporate banking and cash management and investment management line of products across that.
Wow. I'm seeing a follow-up bubbling on your lips, Jimmy.
Yeah, sorry. Searching for the words. A quick ask would be, so obviously very young entrepreneur, aggressive. We're talking about 2 companies built during your college career. Is that right?
At this time, it would be post-college, but let's call it in my 20s.
Okay.
That's right.
And there's this founders syndrome thing. Like you're creating this baby, it's growing, it's becoming profitable, it's solving a need. So the value prop is clear. Talk a little bit about, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead here, but I know that Elena will keep me legit. What was it like entering exit talks already, like at such a young age as an entrepreneur? Because you've got to be thinking about yourself, wow, I'm in my mid-20s. Retirement is something that is decades away. Even if there is a nice pot of gold included there, like walk through that a little bit.
It's a good question. I never thought of it so deeply like that, but I think retrospectively, I could probably give you my thought process on what was going on. I think fundamentally, I always think about first principles quite often. And one of the things that I've realized about myself, which explains kind of both of those exits in the process, was as someone that liked building things, decided to study engineering and then start two different companies. The thing that feels the most rewarding is to make something people want. And I think if you have an exit that's one step towards that, and able to integrate that technology, build something and see it in the hands of people is the most rewarding thing. So looking back, look, financially fantastic outcomes, but I would say that was almost always secondary to just the feeling of having this become something that people were actually using. That euphoria I could never replace. And so that was what I was always looking for. But look, tactically speaking, I think those talks are obviously very intense. They have a lot at stake. It's, you've built something and it's a very serious conversation. It's like anything else. I asked a lot of other folks who had done it, were much better than me and were much further along in their career, got all the notes and synthesized their learnings and learned quickly. And I think that's the only way you can approach these things.
Awesome.
Well said. So that also makes a lot of sense in terms of what happened next. So you had just left Brex, you're figuring out what you want to do. What problem was it that you saw that needed solving, which led you to launch Savvy Wealth?
Yeah, this was something that had been in my mind for a number of years. So going back to the time when we had sold our first company to Box, and then Box went public a few months after, I had a very fantastic problem, which was, hey, well, what do we do with the proceeds from the sale and now the company being public and liquid? So at the time, I got the advice from our investors to go find a financial advisor and work with them to understand what my options were. And at the time, I did not know what to even ask or where to even start. So I ended up actually finding an individual that was helping others find financial advisors. And this individual was effectively running a consulting firm now, I would say more retired from his past career, which was actually running the wealth management department at UBS. So very experienced in terms of everything related to financial advisors, hiring, managing, knowing what's good and what's not. So working with him and his consulting firm, he was able to guide me on all the different questions to ask, what makes a good financial advisor, and even kind of help me through that process, which really got me thinking about it just from a personal need. And the thing I realized is I really enjoyed the industry. So I used to spend a lot of my time learning about how financial advisors work, the things that they are recommending to others, and just learning everything about the wealth management industry here. So over kind of that, let's call it 7-year period between that moment and starting Savvy Wealth, there was two things that I found. One was that as a client, I realized that the value of an actual financial advisor was part of none. The robo-advisor movement and all of those things that were coming about at the time did not compare, because the individual's knowledge and ability to personalize the advice was very valuable. And the second thing I realized was, despite that, the actual experience was always a little puzzling to me, because it was very manual from a client's perspective, kind of snail mailing documents in, no dashboards, emails, and phone calls is how we were always communicating. And so it never made sense as to why the experience itself had to be that way when the value was so high. So over that 7-year period, I ended up talking to maybe 100 different wealth managers, a number of folks in the ecosystem building technology and a whole other suite of services here. And my goal here was to understand the pain points and actually look for a company to invest in. I never thought about building something in here, but really just who is fixing this problem of making a much dramatically better experience in the industry. I never found any conviction around this, around any of the approaches here, and ultimately realized that the core problem is that the actual financial advisor that is working with clients is also wants a better experience, right? No one's asking the client to have, send paper forms, et cetera, but their hands are tied as well, whether it's red tape at the firm or hard to integrate the technology that they're buying and a number of other things. So fast forward to 2021, the solution that we ended up at with Savvy was we can't just build technology and sell it. You can't just create, another wealth management firm and do things the same way. What we thought this right solution is you really got to combine both, because you have to build the technology and operational support so it's much, much more advanced than what exists today, but also implement it from a process and compliance perspective such that it doesn't get mired in the red tape and just get lost like it is at other firms. So that's really how we got started. It was organically kind of just brewing in my head by the time 2021 hit.
That's amazing. Obviously, when it comes to the balance sheet, we're quite different. But you talked to 100 firms, and I heard you about the robos. Like I'll use Ivy, full disclosure, a client, or Marcus for my cash. To me, that just cash management and what I might be able to get on yield from that return, that is a suitable robo experience. But when it comes to financial life planning, make no mistake, I want to work with a human that is almost bionic, because they have all of the tech and the bells and whistles available to them. And why is that? Because when things start to get complex, and now as a business owner they are, and as a father they are, I want someone to not necessarily blame, but I don't want to be the one who is held accountable for all of the decisions. And that's predominantly what happens in the robo front. You'd agree with this, right? I mean, it should go without saying. But when you were meeting with these 100 companies, I got to know, did any of them get close to earning your trust? And I heard you wanted to potentially invest in them. But did you choose on an advisor during that journey, or did you know all along, forget it, I've got to build what I think is needed?
It's a great question. I actually did work with a number of different advisors over that time period. And that's really where I learned that the value, to your point, of having an actual human be the one that's helping with everything related to financial planning, advice, et cetera. So the experience of working with an advisor was critical in the decision to actually go and start Savvy. And it's through that experience, it helped me understand the gaps as well from both a client's perspective, but also an advisor's perspective on how the experience can be so much better, which is a large part of how we think about it at Savvy, where we aren't just building a new client dashboard or some, performance reporting tooling. It really is, how do we give the advisor better tools and integrate it all in one experience to do a better job, so that they can be superpowers. They basically get superpowers in order to work with their clients best. And so that might mean that we make we've made a client dashboard, but that enables the advisor to have a better relationship with the client and give them a better experience. We have an advisor dashboard, but that enables the advisor to do better and faster and smarter work.
All right. Thank you so much for getting into all the details of the technology. What we're curious about now is what kind of advisors are being attracted to come work at Savvy Advisors?
It's a great question. We've found that the best kind of advisors that work on our platform are typically mid-career. So they are they're not looking to start in and build a book of business. They've already found maybe a set of clients. They know their niche well, and they're looking to grow. And they're also not looking to retire just anytime soon. So that's number one. Number two, typically they are either thinking about moving to an independent model or already are in some sort of independent model, but may not have gotten the support that they need. So that's typically criteria number two. And then third is they are anywhere in the United States. We don't restrict anyone in terms of locations with office, et cetera. Everything we've built, including the corporate infrastructure, the actual support systems, and everything is remote friendly. And in fact, over half of our company today is works remotely. So those are the three different criteria, and we found that's the perfect advisor that we've been able to bring on and really help grow and take a lot of that middle and back office burden off of their plate.
Amazing.
What are your personal thoughts on advisors that are coming from the wirehouse or the broker dealer world that want to go purely independent, pure fiduciary? Is that a tough transition? Have you experienced that? Are you trying to avoid that?
Not at all. We're embracing it and happily embracing it because it's a transition that's very popular these days. A lot of advisors are thinking about it, but I think the questions that they ask us is, well, how does it actually happen? How do we actually make that transition? Obviously, a number of issues where you might have business, they might have business that is not conducive to the independent world, or maybe they're thinking about, well, how long does the transition take? A whole suite of things. Because we've done this so many different times, we actually have all of the infrastructure that allows them to transition that business over into an independent model. So they're not losing any clients or losing any business out, and they can kind of keep those relationships and business. And everything is handled for them. So, for example, transitioning their clients, all done either by in the back end by our systems or through a fully digital onboarding flow that the client fills out. It takes less than 15 minutes. And so these are the kinds of fears and questions that typically mire down someone that's interested in making that transition, but may be wondering, well, hey, do I have to spend months filling out paperwork just to move these clients over, and only to find, well, half the business doesn't move over? We found solutions for each and every one of those puzzle pieces.
So cool.
So cool. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the role of public relations and marketing in driving the success of the companies that you have built and sold. So from your experience as a founder, how have you seen the role of those two entities either serve as a hindrance or really offer an incredible boost?
Yeah, it's there's a saying, they say first-time founders think a lot about the product or service being offered. The second-time founders and I guess second and later think about the go-to-market, demand, marketing, and press, and those things a lot more, because it turns out, kind of as you make the mistakes your first time around, you realize that the importance of a good product, that's table stakes. You need to have something that people want. But if you do not have the right way to amplify and craft the message so other people understand it in a succinct, easy, quick, bite-sized way, then it's no better than a science experiment that's done in a corner. And so over the years across the different companies, we've kind of evolved our thinking as well, where the first time around, a lot of the marketing was done and press was me just reaching out to hundreds of reporters, doing things that, learning marketing on the fly and probably doing things that weren't the right things to do. And then the second and now the third time around, being very sophisticated about, look, we spend our time and energy on the areas that actually move the business forward. When in areas of PR, in this case, is our time is best spent finding the best firm and actually being able to rely on them as thought partners in actually helping us craft that PR strategy and executing around it. So that's the way we think about it from a PR and press perspective. And of course, we've working with the best here at Street Cred. So that's kind of how our thinking is evolved. And then on the marketing side, PR is one component of marketing, but again, marketing for us actually is twofold. One is, how do we help our advisors with marketing? Because that's obviously a core part of running their book of business. And then second is, how do we actually get the word out about what we're doing as well? So we think about that a lot internally, about how do we create that demand, awareness, et cetera. And I think that's just a byproduct of learning that it's how important it is in the early days from the first two startups.
Absolutely. Any advice you would offer to other startup founders that are considering working with a PR or a marketing firm?
I would say a couple things. Number one is really understand what the goals and requirements are, and to be very tactical there, be as specific as possible. For example, for us, it was, hey, which PR firm is going to be nimble and scrappy, but also have the inner kind of access and understanding of the wealth management industry, which is very different than talking to, let's call it, the tech reporters and other industries. And so those are the top two goals among a number of others. And I think it's really easy to get caught up with, hey, well, let's just get generic advice on what other PR firms folks are working with, and maybe talk to the flashiest one or the ones that has the best logos, that because the logos are recognizable. But if they're not solving the goals that you have set out, and then that's not worth it. So that's number one, set those goals. Number two is ask for referrals and references, because that is going to speak louder than any sort of web page or web presence online. Again, if you're speaking to any PR or marketing firms, they're going to be amazing at marketing and themselves. So that's where you maybe want to put less focus and actually speak directly to folks that have worked with them, to understand. And I know that was a critical part of our process as well. And then the third is just at the forefront, realize that ask the first principles question of, is this something to invest in at this time? Because you don't want to be in a situation where expectations are mismatched. It's you're obviously paying for that support, and if the dollars that are being invested in in supporting for a marketing firm or a PR firm are not achieving the goals, then it may not be the right time for a company to actually be working with someone. So timing is also very important.
Definitely would agree with all three of those points.
It might be good to also warn our listeners that when you're seeking a PR firm, don't be surprised if you end up kissing a lot of frogs along the way, because, and that goes from our standpoint too. Just because we think we know that we're good within the world of wealth management, that doesn't mean we are the perfect fit for every client, because some just might have certain ways of working internally as their own business, where it doesn't necessarily mesh with how we go about supporting that and amplifying their value prop or what it might be.
Absolutely.
Exactly. 100%. I think it's like hiring someone. When you're hiring someone, you're assessing the skill set and how they fit into the larger organization and culture and ways of working, or good input to it. Apply the same level of rigor there as you would with selecting a PR firm or marketing firm to work with.
Totally.
All great advice. And it's been so wonderful to hear more about your background and the story that started when you were a middle schooler, which is, my mind is still wrapping itself around that fact. But we would love to dive into our second segment of the show now and get into some play. We know obviously so much about your career now, but if you weren't an entrepreneur in financial services, what on earth do you think you'd be doing?
Oh man. I think one of two things. One is in some way giving back. In the one thing that I think I know somewhat well now is how to start and operate early stage companies and help them scale and grow into becoming larger. Whatever that translates into, I don't know, but yeah. I think it always feels good. Maybe the second one, I've always thought, one of the biggest ways to make an impact is really helping educate or teach the next generation. So one of the things I've always thought is it'd be very fascinating and cool to make and write and create children's books where there's some sort of a lesson behind it. Because if you can impart some level of fundamental wisdom or something on a child, and do it at a mass scale, you're actually impacting the future of the world in some sense.
Best answer to that question yet, hands down.
That's amazing. I love that. I can't wait. I guarantee someday we're going to see Ritik Malhotra publishing his first children's book.
Someday.
About you when you were 12, hopefully, not rolling down hills like the rest of us, but actually doing real things and hiring people and making money. Okay, so you log off for the day. What are you doing for fun? What happens after work?
I think the weekdays are relatively boring. Just cool down with some sort of TV, catch up with friends, my partner, etc. So nothing crazy exciting there. I would say maybe I'm always looking at what my next, curiosity is, and I'm always learning or looking at things outside of the context of work. And the latest has been just finding amazing different kinds of foods that taste really good, but are also nutritionally really good. So that's been a fun curiosity that I've been looking at.
Are you
hence the cilantro exploration?
Yeah,
exactly.
Are you a good cook, or is this you're going out?
This is I'm not a cook at all. Forget good. Even so, that's an area I would save to learn at some point. But this is actually more finding snacks that are actually very, very healthy from a nutrition facts perspective, but and taste really, really good. So not like the cardboardy stuff that might look good on a nutrition fact. So that's been my niche these days.
Nice.
You're in a good city to do the research, so that's good. All right. Well, we're just going to close out the show. We like to end with a moment of gratitude. Would love for you to shout out someone in the industry you admire, perhaps someone on your team, really anybody that comes to mind. Yeah, go for it.
In the industry, I would say that I'm very grateful, and it's actually very heartwarming that so many folks that are, I would say, giants and icons in the industry were willing to back us and help us from the start. These are folks at Jordan Park, some folks at Iconic, an individual, Vamsi, who used to be running one of the teams at Focus Financial, and a number of others I'm probably forgetting. But really, I think the amount of support and backing we've gotten from those folks, purely because they want to help others, I think has been exceeded my expectations. So that'd be my shout out.
Ritik, it has been so incredible having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, as well as some fun facts that everyone should also be very excited about. To our listeners, we really hope that you learned something new and enjoyed hearing about Ritik's story as an entrepreneur. Be sure to write us via email at pressplay@streetcredpr.com to tell us what you think, ask us any questions, suggest any guests, or even just to tell us what you've had for lunch today. Thanks again for tuning in, and we can't wait to introduce you to our next guest. Thank you for listening to Press Play, the Street Cred podcast. Visit our website at streetcredpr.com and find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Please don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. And if you enjoyed the episode, we'd love nothing more than if you would rate and review the show. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Street Cred PR. The content has been made available for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. If you have questions about the show or Street Cred PR, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks again for listening.